Good evening, everybody. Good to see all the people that came in here. And yeah, it's great to be in Springettsbury Township. And I think you're going to learn some things that you probably don't know before. There is a test at the end, by the way. I just want to make you aware of that. If you don't want to take the test, just go out the door, okay? And my name up here on the screen is Jeri. In case you don't know me, I was supposed to have been a girl when I was born. My parents were told by the doctor you're going to have a daughter, and I was born, and they had to take the doll babies back and get the dump trucks, and I never changed my name into that. So that's our website, jonesgeo.com, sort of thing. So yeah, I like a little humor here and there. So fast food for cows, right there, huh? I thought it was funny. Never mind. Huh? My paid advertisement night, as Stephen just said, back in April of 2020, we started the Zoom Rock Room because we couldn't go out and see the public like we were so used to doing. So we started to bring the public to us twice a month. So if you really like geology, earth science, a lot of times we have historical programs that special speakers send us an email, and it's a free thing. First and third with myself, and Melanie Tracy is my co-host. So I bet you didn't know those sites were in your township, did you? No. Yeah, they really aren't. Mexican cave with the gypsum crystals. You can see some people there if you look real carefully, and the Rainbow Mountains down in China. That's real color, by the way. So anyway, we only hope that we have such things in Springettsbury Township. And as I was, pardon?
Excuse me. Is that what it really looks like in China, these mountains?
Yep, that's real color. Wow. So when I was preparing for this program, I actually started to think about the rock exposures in Springettsbury Township. There's very few. There really are. I'm going to show you about the two that do exist. Okay, as we go. Okay, before we go any further, I have to give you a little education. Okay, the thing called a rock cycle. Okay, that we think we know our Earth was magma at one time. It was a gas ball, magma ball, right? And it cooled and it made igneous rocks. Igneous rocks are from lava or from magma that was in the ground that never made it to the surface. Those rocks are weathered and eroded. They turn into sediment in streams. Mother Nature glues them back together into sedimentary rocks like sandstone, shale, limestone, and heat and pressure onto those rocks. We can turn those into metamorphic rocks. You'll hear some tonight about a rock called quartzite. Okay, quartzite is a metamorphic rock. So is schist. And actually, we now know with melting of plates deep in the earth, metamorphic rocks do remelt in the magma, and that completes our cycle. And I always challenge anybody who I talk to, particularly college students, think of something that's in nature that's not a cycle. You won't find anything. At least nobody's challenged me in 44 years. So even the formation of rocks. So for tonight, just remember, igneous rocks are magma or lava. Sedimentary rocks were formed in some kind of water environment. Mostly tonight about the ocean. And metamorphic means it changed. How? I'll explain that as we go, okay? Wrong button. So another thing I want you to, yeah, I'm froze up. You had to put another quarter in, didn't you? Okay. So the age of our rocks in Springettsbury Township are way down here in a period that we call the Cambrian Ordovician, roughly 540 million years ago, up into maybe about 490 million years ago. Most of the rocks are in that age, okay? And then we do have one particular rock up here, and it's called the Jurassic period, about 50, 160 million years old. That's during the age of the dinosaurs. Okay?
What is?
The rocks, this age right here, Jurassic age, Mesozoic. See that word Mesozoic on the side? That means age of the dinosaurs. So for Springettsbury Township, that's your range of your rocks. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, introduce you to Alfred Wagner. He's the one that started the theory of continental drift. Everybody has heard of continental drift, I'm sure by now, right? Today we call it plate tectonics. Once I learned to spell a word like continental drift, they changed the name. I have to learn how to spell plate tectonics, okay? But Alfred wrote a book in 1910. He was not a geologist, he was a meteorologist, but he good observer. He traveled all over the world, and he recognized various things, like the same fossils we have in the Appalachian Mountains or in the mountains of England. And he made all this correlation, and he came up with this idea that at one time all the continents were joined together. And he wrote a book in 1910 called The Drifting Continents. He died in 1932. His book wasn't accepted until 1954, when people started to say, I think Alfred knew what he was talking about. So unfortunately, he never saw his idea, his theory, really become what it is today. But today, to be a geologist, you need to know plate tectonics. And that's what I'm going to do in the first 10 minutes here, is to walk you through what this area looked like way back there, 540 million years ago. Before I do that, a little acquainted with your landscape. A lot of Springettsbury Township is in the hole. You're in a valley here, aren't you? Where we are tonight, we're in a valley. We have a ridge that way, we have a ridge that way. So we're all in the Piedmont right now. But we broke the Piedmont into sections, as we call it, and we're in the Piedmont lowlands section right here. When you get up to the hill near up on the ridge, that's the Piedmont uplands section. Or if you go to Rocky Ridge, when you get to the township building going up Route 24, that's another section of the Piedmont uplands. So we have an uplands, lowlands, and uplands in our little area there. Here's a better shot. This is actually a real shot. So I'm standing, this is up close to Longstown. Piedmont upland section is what I'm standing on there. There's the lowland section in the valley, and the upland section out on the other side, okay? Now, why do we have ridges and valleys? It's pretty easy. Hard rocks underlie the ridges. Soft rocks underlie the valley. So we have a rock like quartzite, makes up a lot of the ridges. What do we have here in the valley? Anyone want to tell me?
Limestone.
Yeah, we have limestone and a little shale. Right, limestone. That's a soft rock. Okay, so see, you already learned something already. Here's a geological map, actually, that the Pennsylvania Survey did for me because I was getting ready for this program. And every color on here represents a certain rock formation. Now, what's a rock formation? It's a body of rock that formed at a certain time of geologic period, time, under a condition, like the limestone we have under here. It's called the Conestoga limestone, named from Conestoga, Lancaster County, because the early geologists who found this rock for the first time and it wasn't named, they said, well, the best exposure of this rock is in Conestoga. So we're going to call it the Conestoga Formation. So if I hear that Conestoga Formation, that tells me, that rock is a certain age, it's limestone. I kind of have an idea of what it looks like, sort of thing. And we have other names up there you might see that are on the map that are in your township, like the Antietam and Harper's formations. Harper's is named from Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, right? Same rock. Okay. What else is there? The Vintage Formation. You have the Vintage in township. Vintage is a small town over there in 30 east of Lancaster. Okay, Vintage and Kinzers is the other one over there. So anyway, if I talk about formation, which I will, that's what I mean. So anyway, all this stuff on here represents different types of rocks. The OC, this OCC here, that's the Limestone Valley, and Rocky Ridge Park, for example, is about right there. Actually, it's right there in the green line on the township border, for example, okay? So these are made available actually through the state. They have different county geological maps on board. All right, here we go. 1 billion years ago, when I was a small kid, all the continents were one. And it was called Rodinia. We think that all these continents were down at the South Pole. And you see this country right here, oops, Laurentia, that's us. We weren't North America at that time. North America didn't come along until Pangea, Alfred Wagner's continental drift theory, broke up. So we were called Laurentia, okay? And I talked about cycles. Remember Alfred Wagner had Pangea? Well, here's Rodinia, that's 600 million years older than Alfred. And actually, if you go on the internet today and look for supercontinents in the past, there's now about 6 that go back to about 3.4 billion years ago. So Alfred's Pangea is the most recent now. Right? All right, so what was going on? Well, when Rodinia broke apart, the mechanism to break it apart was volcanoes under an ocean. Oh, where do we have that today? Y is a type, yes. The mid-oceanic ridge out there in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, right? 2 plates are moving apart. Okay, that's exactly what we had right here. Our plates were moving apart very close to where we are tonight. And there's 2 rocks, one's called Metabasalt. Meta means it's been changed. Metamorphism. So it's been changed a little bit. And the volcanic slate. Slate's a metamorphic rock. Volcanic means that most of that debris in that rock actually was like volcanic ash that got hardened into a rock. And you have that very close to the township, on the ground, exposed, okay? Where's that? Well, it's right there. There's Quartz Creek at the bottom of the screen, right? Right there's Quartz Creek and Hellam area. So over here in the Piedmont upland section, close to where Quartz Creek Road goes up, you have metabasalt and you have volcanic slate. And I can guarantee you, if you go down off the slope of Rocky Ridge Park like you're heading toward Ridgewood Road, and you would drill down about 500 feet, you're going to find the same rock. It's just not exposed in Springettsbury Township, unless you want me to move that line to the right a little bit to lie. Okay. So volcanic rocks are very, very, very close by here. Okay, 540 million years ago, dark green guy, that's us, Laurentia. We're starting to move north. We're in the southern hemisphere. Okay, that's not the Atlantic Ocean. That's called the Iapetus Ocean. So 540 million years ago, what's happening around here? Well, we have an ocean around us, and we have Laurentia, a very young continent, just broke away from Rodinia, and things are starting to erode off the land mass off of our continent, starting to build what we call a continental shelf. You all acquainted with the continental shelf? Everybody has probably swam on the continental shelf. You just don't know it. If you go to the Atlantic Ocean, you're on the continental shelf, right? So at Rocky Ridge Park, one of my favorite places for, how many years of Christmas magic I did, you have what we call the Hellam Conglomerate. You know what a conglomerate is? Besides two businesses joining like Comcast? A conglomerate is a sedimentary rock that has rounded pebbles in it. Simple as that. If you ever see a rock with rounded pebbles, all you got to say is, that's a conglomerate. And boy, you'll impress your neighbors really quick. Like, wow, how do you know that? Okay. That's all you need to know. So at Rocket Ridge, we have all kind of conglomerate. And this actually is back off the main trail. And yes, if you would stand on that layer right there, you're standing on what we think is a delta 540 million years ago. You stand right there in that layer and say, boy, 540 million years ago, this is where one body of water was flowing into a larger body of water. And so there's conglomerate all over the place. Look at it a little bit closer. There's the white quartz pebbles. They're well-rounded. That tells us that they were transported in some kind of water for maybe, based on their shape, 40 to 50 miles before they were deposited into this sand. Okay? And by the way, quartz, that's how a geologist buys his milk. I like this side better over here. And you see those two dark fragments in the middle? They are pieces of a rock called Rhyolite, which is a volcanic rock. If I take you down to Acromac, you'll see Rhyolite, volcanic lava. Well, that shows us that rhyolite was weathering and eroding 540 million years ago. A little bit. They're not rounded. They're pretty angular shaped. They weren't moved very far. So every rock has a story to tell you. And that's why I'm trying to educate you tonight. When you go on vacation this summer, send me a picture of a rock and I'll give you a story. All right, well, there's other indications 540 million years ago about what our environment was like. For example, we'll not go into a lot of detail. This rock, you may be able to see two directions of lines on here. One's going this way, and the other's kind of going magnified this way a little bit, right? That's a feature in sedimentary rocks that we know as cross bedding. That means, and maybe you've seen this at the beach, there's two directions of wave action coming in. You might see a wave coming in this way, and the next wave's coming in this way, overlapping that. Back and forth. That's making cross bedding. That will maybe turn into a rock eventually. So if you can understand what's going on with our Earth today, like cross bedding, you see it in a rock that's 540 million years ago, you can figure out what's going on. There on the right, ripple marks. You've seen ripple marks in the ocean, very shallow water. It's like this, right? Well, again, we understand how they're made. Well, there they are, 540 million years old. And there are some real ripple marks right there at the beach. So I'm building a scene for you. We have a beach scene. And I'm going to add that because we have this fossil. And this fossil is found in Springettsbury Township, up on the ridge. Okay? It's called Scolithus. And it's not a very sensational looking thing. It's a tube of what we think is a sea worm. He lived at the beach 540 million years ago. And there's still sea worms living at the beach today. I hate to tell you this. But when you stick your feet in the water, and you're getting used to the coldness of the Atlantic Ocean, there's little worms looking at your feet saying, yuck. Not Scolithus. But Scolithus, we're a very short-lived organism, we think. Now, these are the tubes. This is their homes. We have never seen the worm because worms don't fossilize. They're soft-bodied. They decay away. Okay? So we have never seen the actual animals. And that still has a little question mark. Is that really what they are? They're named from Chickee's Rock, though. If you go onto the internet, look at Scolithus, it will say the type site is Chickee's Rock, Lancaster County, PA. And if you find a rock with scolithus worm tubes in, you can automatically put that rock at 540 million years old. You can find them at Pine Grove Furnace. 540 million years old. You go to Germany, find them 540 million years old. So they're actually they're a good dating tool. And here's another animal that lived here. This is like a very, very early coral, Monocriterion. Anybody knows where, how to phrase this, there used to be a sand pit behind Harley-Davidson up on the hill. I'm going to talk about that here soon. But that quarry used to be full of Scolithus, Monocriterion, and this guy, which is a Mickwitchiid. I've only ever found one. This is actually a very old shell, or a very old brachiopoid. I've only found one in that whole formation. In fact, I had to send that one over to overseas to get it identified, because it just blew my mind. Like, what is this thing? Anyway, so we have life at the beach. 540 million years old, right? I just proved it to you. Now there's another formation that's in Springettsbury Township called the Kinzer's Shale, Kinzer's Formation. And it's like the beginning of the ridges, right off the limestone, but as you just start to gain a little elevation out of the valley, we have a very, very thin layer of shale called the Kinzer's Shale. And the Kinzer's Shale is very highly known for one group of fossils. This guy right here. He's called a Olenellus trilobite. Trilobites were the long descendant of horseshoe crabs. Okay, they were actually the first complex organism to be in the ocean. Starting about 515 million now. So I just jumped up 25 million years. So the Kinzer's Formation has produced some beautiful trilobites. Not in Springettsbury Township. I've not heard of any. Manchester Township, yeah. There's several sites in Manchester Township. Lancaster County has a number of them. But trilobites, just for your own knowledge, they just kind of showed up in the fossil record out of nowhere. A lot of fossils, we can actually see an evolution, of them moving into another type of animal. Trilobites, they just showed up. Where did they come from? And that's still a mystery. Here's some limestone. The vintage limestone, I talked about that earlier, right? This is actually out in the rail trail just below Rudy Park, because Springettsbury Township lacks rock outcrops. I can't take pictures of nothing, right? So limestone is a sedimentary rock. It has layers in it because the calcium and the sediment was laid down in layers on this continental shelf. So as I said, the valley here is all limestone. Here's a vintage formation over going up the hill toward Longstown, but right off the valley. That kind of shows a wrinkly surface, like there was a lot of pretty harsh ocean current involved in moving that sediment around. It's just not nice and smooth. It's kind of really rough. So it may have been maybe a marine landslide nearby that made stuff rumple up. So this is what we might look like. The red star is Springettsbury Township. And this is the oldest historical picture of Springettsbury Township on record, okay? I wanted to make sure I got that in. But there we are. Here we have the October Sea. We had a microcontinent, some other body of a continent off the coast at some mileage. Then we had the Iapetus Ocean, and then we had the volcanic island arc, very similar to today's Aleutian Islands. You know where the Aleutians are? Okay. Well, we had those off the East Coast, and all this came together eventually and added land to Larenta, Laurentia, okay? And volcanic islands actually are now found as rocks north of Baltimore, around Newark, Delaware, over there. 360 million years ago, there we are, dark green again. We're getting closer to the equator. We're still moving north. 300 million years ago, now we're starting to look like what you would call North America. Florida's kind of sticking out there, but half the continent's still in the southern hemisphere. And you see things are starting to come back together because we're starting to form Pangea. Back to pleasing Alfred Wagner, okay? So at this point in time, years ago, we had a big wreck. Africa and North America came together to help form Pangea. And when they came together, and I'm not going to give you the options here because of time, but there was certainly a big wreck where basically our landscape at that time here got pushed 50 miles to the northwest from Africa, colliding with us. Like me hopping on a bulldozer in Baltimore, Maryland, and pushing the Earth's crust 50 miles to the northwest. So as we were pushing, things were getting what we call folded. Things were breaking and we had faults. My wife over here tells me I have a lot of faults. I'm not sure what she means by that. But it's called the Alleghenian orogeny. And that's part of bringing Pangea back together. So again, here's an older geological map. And what I want to highlight here is this dark line right there is called the high mount thrust. And the dark line back here is called the Glades thrust. What is the thrust? Well, if you can visualize in your head, if I could go over to the base of the ridge at the township building, and I could dig down deep enough and pull the rock out, you'll see that this valley rocks are slid up and over the ridge rocks. And where the Glades overthrust is, which is about where the Brook Valley Road is for some of it, the ridge is pushed up over the rocks to its north. Might look something like this, where this body of rock got pushed up and over the other body of rock. So at each side of this ridge back here, I call it the Township Ridge, we have a major fault on both sides. Yes?
That be called a vein of rock?
No, vein is something different. It's just been displaced, faulted. So if you're going to have any earthquakes in Springettsbury Township, if you live on Ridgewood Road, I'd be a little nervous. Not really. These things haven't shown any signs of movement for a long time, okay? So, yeah, anyway, that ridge back there is bordered by faults. Okay, 180 million years ago, there's Pangea. But Pangea is beginning to break up. By, again, just like you mentioned with Hawaii earlier, the mid-oceanic ridge, the volcanism coming up, splitting the plates apart. And we had in our area, if you could visualize the Palisades outside New York, that's where there was a column of stationary magma that was coming up, breaking the crust into three parts. And the one part of that Y shape actually came down through northern York County. I actually came through, Pennsylvania, but through northern Lancaster County, Lebanon County, northern York County, most of Adams County, is where it was trying to break apart. If that, what we call Rift Valley, just to our north of Springettsbury Township, would have been successful tonight, we'd be meeting in Morocco. So don't ever say geology never affected you. So, as the earth was breaking apart into these plates, into the continents we know of today, Mother Earth got damaged by fracturing, by breaking, right? So Mother Earth knows how to fix herself. So about 150, 160 million years ago, magma came up through these cracks to heal Mother Earth back together. And not so much volcanoes. It was more of an intrusion of magma. Maybe it stopped 4 to 5 miles deep, and it solidified into rock. And that rock today is called diabase. See there in the lower right-hand corner? It's called diabase. It's an igneous rock that formed 4 to 5 miles beneath the crust, the surface. Today it's at the surface because it's very hard. Any farmers in here, if you have diabase, you know it as ironstone because it's very tough. So this is the famous Stony Brook Dike out here in the railroad cut. If you go across the Pleasant Acres Bridge and look to your left, you'll see the dike. And on this geological map, it shows up as this red line right there. It actually starts down in Maryland and goes across the Susquehanna River and up, actually just north of E-Town is where it stops. But what makes it so famous? It's the best exposed dike in southeast Pennsylvania. That's just the diabase right there. It's about 20 feet wide. It's a hard rock, so if you ever go to the First Post restaurant and look behind the restaurant at the parking lot, behind the old house that sits there, there's a hill. That's the dike. Diabase supports a little bit higher elevation. And even over at the county home, there's a little knoll going through there. Okay, so the rock to the right of the diabase this is what we call hornfells. That used to be limestone, but it got cooked by the heat of the magma. It literally got cooked, and it became metamorphosed. Okay, now if you walk trail number 6 at Rocky Ridge, you'll see boulders of diabase laying along the trail because the Stony Brook Dike goes right through Rocky Ridge Park. And it's supposed to be there around the overlook, the North Overlook. I've never found any fragments of diabase in there, but supposedly it goes right through there. And it goes across the Codorus Creek, just upstream from the Codorus Furnace. I can see it in the creek there. And it goes across the Susquehanna River, what's called the Haldeman's Rapids, or riffles. The riffles is the diabase. So anyway, that's one of the most important rock outcrops in Springettsbury Township. Now here's our limestone on the left. Okay, that's the normal limestone. That's the way it should look. And I have the dike marked over there. So this limestone on the left had not been altered by the heat. If you go down into the railroad cut, you'll see limestone as it should look right there where LS is. That has not been baked at all. Hello, okay. Another quarter. There we go. So here's Stony Brook Dike. Now, interestingly enough, you all know how Stony Brook got named, supposedly by the babbling of the brook. Well, limestone doesn't babble. Limestone's a soft rock. Water goes over limestone, and you'll never know it. But water goes over diabase, there's nice babbling. So without the Stony Brook Dike, you wouldn't have Stony Brook. See, geologically related. Okay, I got to keep preaching that to him. Okay. The Chesapeake Bay impact, our last geologic history here. Did you know we had an impact crater under the Chesapeake, south at the southern part of the bay, right where Cape Charles and things? Okay, 35 million years ago, we think now it was an asteroid actually impacted the Earth there, and it played havoc with our landscape, maybe more than other geologists realize. We just had a program in our Zoom rock room about a month ago from a gentleman who has studied this very intently, and he has a totally different theory about what that did to our landscape than any other geologist in Pennsylvania ever thought. I kind of like his idea that there's more destruction to our landscape with that than Africa and North America coming together. Really interesting. It really got us, the pros that are in my room, thinking. So, yeah, we did. So. Hey, camp security. The reason I put this in, they did find prehistoric artifacts at camp security over the years. And some of the rock that makes up those tools is a rock called Rhyolite. Metamorphosed rhyolite. That's a volcanic rock. I already talked about that down in Accomack. This rock, though, is from up just south of Caledonia in what we call the Carball Run Preserve. We know of prehistoric quarry sites there, where at least 8,000 years ago, people quarried the rhyolite and made tools, made projectile points. So that rock that they found at Camp Security, the dark gray rock, came from Caledonia. Okay? It's called Snaggy Ridge. Anybody's ever a hiker, you want to go to Carball Run Preserve and walk back the trail and get up on the Snaggy Ridge, you'll see the holes where prehistoric people quarried the rock. There's a closer view of them. I throw this in because it's kind of special. It's not in Springettsbury Township. It's actually on the property of the York County Firemen's Training Center in Manchester Township, called Bootlegger Sinkhole. It was a sinkhole roughly 13 to 8,000 years ago, and animals fell into the sinkhole and died. And 13 to 8,000 years ago, we were ending our ice age. So we had ice age mammals living here. So Bootlegger Sink actually, when the fire training center was built, Bootleggers was one of only 4 ice age mammal fossil sites in the world. And that's why the fire chiefs voted to keep it open. They could have filled it in very easily and said, sorry, but they felt it had significance to it. So there's just a list of all the animals. The local caving clubs used to go out there in the 60s and 70s, excavate Sunday afternoons, remove the bones, send them to Carnegie Institute in Pittsburgh for identification. Caribou, weasel, porcupine, Arctic shrew. So it still is a very important site. It's under lock and key. Only 2 people really have keys to it. There's not been any excavation there at all. Okay, mineral resources. That's stuff we take out of the ground for our use. Springettsbury Township is actually loaded with that, which is, so there's a list of mineral resources out of York County. This is your test. Just visualize in your own mind which of those were found or removed in Springettsbury Township. Let's see. So let's start at the top because that's the way the program's set up. Yes, limestone. Dolomite? No. Iron ore?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. How about copper? Nope. Any lead? Sand? Clay? Decorative stone? Yep. Slate? And I'll use that term loosely. I'll explain why when I get there. And I got one more over here to add. We were just talking about that before the show tonight. Gold in Springettsbury Township? Geology is not quite right. Although, if we find an outcrop of that volcanic rock very close to the Hellam Springettsbury border, if we find an outcrop of that, there's a chance. You need volcanic rocks for gold. So I'm not saying it's not impossible, but to today, there's not been any gold found. All right, I'm going across the border here, just because I like standard concrete. Okay, they're actually located in Manchester in Springettsbury Township. Their original quarry. Okay, and actually, when I read the history of Springettsbury Township book from '91, I said, "Wait a minute, where's standard concrete? I left it out." And then I saw where it was located. Like, oh, it's not in Springettsbury. But anyway, their quarry is now water-filled, Sherman Street, 83. Of course, Standard Concrete still has their shop right across the street, right there. But that was their original quarry from 23 to 1954. That's when they opened the quarry out next to Rudy Park, and operated that until, well, sometime around 2014 or so. They were taking out limestone to make for cinder blocks and all that. Iron ore, that's the big one. In York County, these are the iron mining districts of York County. We had like 180 iron mines in York County from about 1770s to 1910. Okay, so you'll see there the Hellam Hills. Okay, and this is this is a picture of an incline. Actually, this is out of the Glatco Lake up toward Hanover that P.H. Bethler used to own. It's now private owned, and it's not even a pond anymore. It's been dewatered. But that's what the incline looks like, how they got the iron ore out of these larger ones. One car goes down while the other car goes up, turned by originally mules turning a wheel with the cables. It later became steam with coal. Here's a picture of an iron ore washer. All your iron mines in Springettsbury Township as well as Hellam Township had washers because the iron ore was not coming out of the rock. It was in clay. So they had to wash it. So the washer was like a big sluice, had paddles on, cleaning up the clay and separating the iron ore from the clay. And then that was what was shipped out. Now we had furnaces, but you didn't have any in the township. Cador's furnace is probably the closest one. It is the closest one. And although you were affected by it because, first of all, you need iron ore to run a furnace. You need chestnut wood that was actually slowly burned, smoldered into charcoal. So much of the woods in a 5-mile radius around Cador's furnace has been, many of those hills were deforested several times, including probably Rocky Ridge area, and limestone that acted as flux. We have limestone in this valley. We had limestone up near Saginaw. That was the source for the ore there. So this is what the iron ore kind of looked like. It's called goethite or limonite. Back in the 1800s, it was about 35-38% iron. Back then, that was pretty good. Today, you need about 90% pure iron. And that's why we don't have any iron mines at all in the United States anymore. We just don't have the purity. But that's what it looks like. So I'm going to show you where these iron mines are. So all the banks, except for the Benson and Cottrell bank, hauled their ore to Myers Switch. Anybody knows where Myers Switch was? Memory Lane at Caterpillar. Okay, so all these iron mines, I'm going to show you, they brought their ore there except for the Benson and Cottrell bank because they were closer to Amixville. They actually took their ore into Amixville, which was actually then all shipped over to Marietta. Marietta had a whole chain of furnaces along the northwest Lancaster County River Trail. Written history. If you read your 1991 history of Springettsbury Township, here's the names of the iron, not mines, they were called banks because they were mostly digging into a bank. Okay, remember, they weren't doing hard rock mining. We were digging out the clay where the iron ore was. So Daniel Laux, you can read it as well as I can, operated by Benson and Cottrell. Their name's going to show up a lot. 4 men with a 8 horsepower engine. That was to work the washer. The Eberts, hey, yeah, Eberts Lane, right? Okay. There were 2 pits there. The northern one's called the Quartz. Again, operated by Benson and Cottrell. 10 tons a day. Miners got paid $1.25 a day. And they were using 600 to 700 pounds of coal a day to operate their engine. So anyway, you need to bring coal in. There was another one, a very short one, the Heidelbach. There's the Cottrell and Benson mine. That was probably one of the biggest operations in the township. I'm going to show you where these were. 1,000 pounds of coal a day had to be brought in. Smizers, we really don't know much about Smizers. That's probably the one that's most familiar to you. At this point, you're just not saying you don't know that because you don't know where it was. You will when I show you the picture. And the final ones are on the east side of the township, very close to, in fact, the Jacob Dietz Bank is actually just in Hellam Township. That was actually being operated by Mr. Steve Eagle, who owned several furnaces in the Marietta area. All right, so if you look at where the iron mines are, if you can see it, IRs. They're all in a straight line. Right along the border between a CA, which is sandstone, and CV, which is our vintage formation. So the iron ore is actually being formed by the leaching of water coming down through sandstone and into the limestone. And right there in that contact, as we call it, is where the iron ore was being formed. That's why they're all kind of in a straight little line there, most of them. This is where Daniel Laux Bank was. Sherman Street. Between that road and what's the next road up? Topper's up that way, but there's another street further up. But that was an iron mine. Everts Bank. Here's the apartment complex in North Hills Road, Coventry, right? Is that Coventry? Okay. So in the wooded area behind Strine Heating and Air Conditioning, a lot of this is being now backfilled in. When I was there the other week. There's a lot of filling going on in there. Probably had destroyed everything, but that's when it had the 2 pits to it. There's nothing left of it. Cottrell and Benson. This is at the intersection of Mount Zion Road and Mundus Mill Road, since they changed that around from my older days. Do you remember the pond that used to be over here? On the right-hand side, when you come down Mount Zion Hill. Used to be a stop sign there, right, originally. There was a pond over there. That was the Smizer Bank. And Cottrell and Benson is now all ruined. It's farmland now. Woodstream Drive development, that's where the Heidelbach Bank was, someplace back in there. That's all housing development. And I know if I go knocking on doors, nobody's going to know what I'm talking about. The Fitz Bank, that's the township building. Used to be the Avalon Morgan horse farm. Anybody remember the Avalons? My brother had married into the Long family. So I spent a lot of time in the Morgan horse barn until I got kicked by a Morgan horse, and that was the end of that. But in that wooded area right there, there is a pond. Springettsbury has actually filled it in now. But that was the Fitz Bank, and I have a concern. because up behind the fifth bank, we have this big mound. That's all waste rock and dirt out of the mine. It's not solid bedrock. I think there's a better picture. The tailings, as we call it, houses are built on top. I can't believe that those apartments are not sinking. It's one of two places in the county where I know there's a building sitting where they shouldn't be sitting. Anybody that lives there, I don't want to be scaring you, but I do know a realtor. But Jacob Dietz Bank is here on Alpine Road and Pleasant Valley. That's it. I couldn't think of it. Pleasant Valley Road. And what you see here is a embankment right in here. That's the waste rock. The pit was on the other side, which I think a lot of that's been filled in by the landowner. And the Samuel Dietz is actually right behind a home about a quarter-mile east of here, of the last one. And it's pretty obvious that that's a nice bank dug into the hillside. And if you go into Hellam Township, following Pleasant Valley Road, you'll get into, you'll see this nice pond. It's called Willow Miller Bank. That was one of the ones now getting into Hellam Township. And before you get to the pond, on the right-hand side, there's Route 30 behind it, back in the background. You'll see the tailings pile. In fact, if you're really observant and you drive Route 30 to the Susquehanna River, you'll see 3 or 4 of those tailing piles along the way. PennDOT shed, for example. They have a tailings pile right next to their gate. They're all in that same line, okay? Okay, get into the sand. The Elmer Big King brothers. This is up in I call it the Cador's Creek Gorge, and the Newman Sand Bank, which was the more popular one behind Harley-Davidson. If you really look at that view now, that quarry has been reclaimed. Kinsley owns it, and they have just filled it in. Okay, so my Scolistus and Monocriterions and all those are gone for life. The Bertha Bruton Sand was right off of was just north of there, close to Sherman Street right there. And then another one that we haven't really found, but it's supposed to be right in this area, was the W.J. Herman Sand, very close to the radio transmitters on the hill, very close to Camp Penn, right? Okay, in there. Thanks to Stephen over here, he had this in one of his articles. This is the Newman Sandbank along of course, Cador's Creek, along the rail trail, and some of the structures are still standing, although they're on private property. But a lot of sand was taken out of the Newman's bank. We had a field trip in there one time with geologists. That's kind of what the Quartz site looked like. So this has now all been filled in by Bob Kinsley's construction. Okay. Stonewood Park. You know where I'm at? That was a quarry for limestone and supposedly some slate. It was actually a shale. It wasn't really a slate. Coming out of here, if you do walk, particularly the left picture up here, you'll see that there's evidence that it was backfilled in, and that was part of the quarry up there, and the wetlands over here was all part of the quarry. The whole area was being quarried for the Stony Brook Slate and Brick Company. And that seems to be a very elusive business. There's only one picture that exists, which you'll see, but not much information other than witnesses who My grandfather worked there, and exactly where it was in Stony Brook near the railroad crossing, that's all we know. We really don't know exactly where it was. This is the picture. It's out of your History of Springettsbury Township book, because that's the only one that exists. When they made some slate and brick, and supposedly there was a little dingy railroad that ran from the quarry to the plant. Maybe not that straight, but that's the best I could do on my computer. Stony Brook Mennonite Church. The brick came from the Stony Brook brick and slate. So did what's the pizza place there? Pizza place on Market Street. Marino's. Marino's has redone their building, and the paddock supposedly had brick on it. Chickie Slate. Chickie's Formation. It has a little bit of slate in. Stonewood and Mountain Road. It's a better time to see it in the wintertime, but there's actually a cut into the hillside right there, about a 30-foot high wall in the back where they did take out slate for road gravel sometime. I don't know exactly when. And environmental geology problems. Sinkholes. You got limestone. You can have sinkholes and caves, okay? And that's not from Springettsbury Township. But when they built the Greater York Baptist Church in there on Eastern Boulevard, I can testify, because I've talked to the engineers, that there's caverns under the church. And it has created a little bit of problem. So if you go to the church there, make sure you up your giving, because next week you may not be there. Eastern Boulevard, right across from the school, right? Let's see. What's on that other corner? Athletic. This is an athletic leathering right there. Eastern Boulevard. Wendy's is around here someplace. Central High School, yeah. That's been kept pretty quiet. Back there in what would be the southeast corner, around the gym, is where they've had some issues inside because of sinkholes. They knew the sinkholes were there before the school was built. It wasn't as bad as the West Manchester Mall. Yeah. I won't get into that one, but yeah. And York Galleria. Actually, York Galleria is pretty safe. You may remember when they opened it in '89 that it vibrates, it moves. Well, it's earthquake prone. That's the way it was built. Seriously. It was built to absorb the shock wave. So that's why it moves. These days, with the gambling place there, somebody really loses a lot of money. Boy, I bet the building that moves is really a lot. But anyway, no problem with York Galleria Mall. Even when Avalon's was there was no sinkholes in that field or anything. So anyway, did you know the world looks like a cat playing with a ball? So thank you for your attention tonight, and I hope you learned a little bit, and you have a lot to offer, really, in Springettsbury Township. Oops. Thank you. I have time for a couple questions.